if we could find some way to just package exercise into a pill, we'd be bazillionaires.
I don't like the bazillionaire.
What's wrong with bazillionaire?
We're not trying to be bazillionaires. I'm not trying to be a bazillionaire.
I know, but the point is just how good exercise is.
Yeah, that it would be the most prescribed drug in history.
Okay. This is the kind of stuff I don't understand. Like, I didn't say anything wrong. I just didn't follow your script exactly.
It's your script. This isn't my script. I love you. I love you, but I'm frustrated.
Welcome to MD Longevity Lab, where we're playing the long game. This is a podcast where science meets real life, with expert insights, practical tips, and real-world tools to not only live longer, but live better. Our aim is to radically change the way medicine is practiced and enable individuals to age gracefully, maintaining healthspan and vitality well into their later years. We're your hosts, Dr. Nisha and Dr. Vikas Patel, physicians, partners in life, and parents balancing work, wellness, and everything in between. Let's dive in.
Welcome back to the MD Longevity Lab podcast, where we are playing the long game. I'm Dr. Nisha Patel.
And I'm Dr. Vikas Patel. Today, we are going to get into what might be the single most powerful longevity intervention available, and it is completely free.
That's right. We are talking about exercise, but not just the classic move more generic advice. We're breaking down exactly what types of exercise matter most for extending both your lifespan and your health span. So, why don't you tell us about how our gym experience went with the kiddos today?
I think it went well. So, Nisha's decided that it is a good idea for us to have family gym time because her mom and dad used to take them to the YMCA when they were kids. And the entire family, 5 kids plus parents, used to go to the gym. We're a little short. We have 3 kids.
The boys are now into it. Aria, we still kind of have to twist her arm, but once she's there, she gets really competitive with the boys. So we are trying to teach them discipline, and that movement is a part of our daily lives, and hopefully set them up for success in the long run with their own health.
I think we've already succeeded with our oldest. Max got inspired by Nisha's running, I think. And he completed a half marathon just a few weeks after he turned 14. I think that was the minimum age, right?
Yeah.
Enroll. And so he did that just 2 months ago now.
Yeah. So we're pretty proud of them. I hope they keep it up and carry it on for the rest of their lives. Today we did bench press, sled pushes, box jumps, pull-ups, deadlifts, squats. You guys did dead hangs.
We had a dead hang competition. That's right. We did planks.
Yeah.
The whole family did planks together.
Yeah. Dead hangs, Max and Luke ended up chicken fighting and trying to pull each other down. Yeah. So.
Yeah. Par for the course.
No, but in all seriousness, I think we both align on that, right? Giving our kids the tools to be successful. It starts in childhood. We know that.
Yeah, because here's the reality. You can live to 90, but if you spend the last 15 years of your life unable to get off the floor, unable to play with your grandkids, unable to travel independently, I just don't feel like those extra years are really living. And that's really what we mean by health span and maintaining physical function and mental sharpness or acuity, and really just independence throughout your life.
Yeah, so today we're covering the science behind exercise and longevity, the 4 pillars of an optimal exercise program, and exactly how to structure your week for maximum benefit without turning fitness into a full-time job.
Part of why I wanted to cover this topic today was because I was listening to some experts speak about exercise and training lately. And honestly, they just made it so complicated and nuanced. Specifically, the talk they were giving was about women and exercise and how through different parts of their life, whether it's premenopause, perimenopause, postmenopause, how training should be different. And then on top of that, like just different parts of the menstrual cycle itself. So the difference between days 1 through 7, 7 through 14, 14 to 21, and then 21 to 28, and how women should be planning differently for all of those things. And I felt like as a doctor, I had a hard time trying to compute what they were putting out. And I thought that this might be a good topic on how to make it a little bit less complicated.
I know. I listened to that too. And while I appreciated much of the input, it was so complex and over my head and quite frankly intimidating. I work out 6 days a week and I felt like I was doing it wrong listening to them.
And I think that's the problem, right? Like, there's no doubt there's nuance to some of this stuff, but there's a huge, huge difference between what a competitive athlete might think of, how they might think about this versus all of the rest of us, because the rest of us are not, we're just not competing on that type of level where some of that conversation might actually make a difference. There are some general principles, I think, but for the 99% of the rest of us, I think what we'll talk about today is what really makes sense.
Yep. So we're going to start with the big picture, the science, and why exercise is the ultimate longevity drug. Vikas, why don't you tell us why exercise is so powerful?
Yeah, well, I think we've talked about this before. If we could package exercise into a pill, it would definitely be the most prescribed medication in history. The data is absolutely remarkable. Regular exercisers live 3 to 7 years longer on average compared to sedentary people. And more importantly, they're just living better. They're actually extending their health span, not just their lifespan.
Right. We are not just adding years to our life by exercising, we're adding life to our years. So, exercise impacts literally every organ system in your body.
So let's break down some of the key mechanisms here. So there's some topics that I think are worth covering kind of through different systems in the body, right? So we've talked about this before. Cardiorespiratory fitness is the number one predictor of longevity. So VO₂ max is more predictive of all cause mortality than any other metric, including smoking, diabetes, family history. It's just that powerful.
Yeah. And we've touched on muscle. Muscle is our metabolic organ. And we've sometimes referred to it as the currency of longevity. Your skeletal muscle isn't just for movement, it's your body's glucose disposal system, inflammation regulator, and hormone producer.
I think everybody has heard about mitochondria. Those are kind of the powerhouses of the cell. That's where energy production actually occurs. So, exercise actually stimulates mitochondrial biogenesis. That means it's actually improving the function of those mitochondria. It actually helps us produce more mitochondria within the cell. And in doing so, it helps us to make energy when we need it and to be more efficient at making energy.
Yeah, and just to piggyback off mitochondrial health, there's so many supplements out there touting claims for boosting mitochondrial health. It gives people this false sense of security that I can take this supplement and not exercise when exercise is so much more powerful than a supplement when it comes to your mitochondrial health.
That's adding the 1%, and the exercise is adding the 99%.
For sure. So, inflammation reduction, exercise can reduce chronic systemic inflammation. And it's been known to lower high sensitivity C reactive protein and interleukin 6, some inflammatory markers.
Definitely. Also, in the cognitive realm, we know that it improves and increases the level of brain derived neurotrophic factor. This is one of the proteins in our central nervous system that helps to regulate our mood, allows us to generate new pathways within our brain, and promotes neurogenesis. People who exercise regularly end up having a reduction in their dementia risk by 30 to 40%. And this grossly improves their executive functioning.
And let's not forget about our metabolic health. Exercising improves your insulin sensitivity, your glucose disposal, your lipid profiles. And we all know that exercise helps with weight loss, or more importantly, fat loss.
Correct. So here's what's really compelling, right? The data shows that there is a dose dependent response relationship. And in general, the more you exercise, the better the end point is, the better the response is. Even modest levels of exercise provide significant benefits.
Exactly. Studies show that going from zero exercise to even 75 minutes of moderate activity per week, which is basically like 10, 15 minutes a day, reduces your all cause mortality by about 20 to 25%. That's huge. But the benefits continue to increase up to 300 to 450 minutes per week.
Yeah, there's definitely a point where once you exceed it, there can be some increase in inflammation, right? That's these ultra marathoners, but let's be real, that's the 0.01% who's taking exercise to a whole nother level. Most of us fall into the sub 450 minutes of exercise a week category, and all we're doing is just getting crazy benefit out of it. So one of our favorite studies to look at is regarding VO₂ max and mortality. And people in the bottom 20 percentile for cardiorespiratory fitness have a five-fold increased risk of death compared to people in the top 2%. Five-fold. That's crazy numbers.
Yeah, and here's the kicker: being unfit was riskier than having diabetes, smoking, or having cardiovascular disease. So, your fitness level is literally the best predictor of how long you'll live and, more importantly, how functional you are.
So I think it's probably worth talking about the four pillars of a longevity focused exercise program. And I think it's easy to break it down if we think of it in these terms. Exercise is so powerful. And really, the natural next question is, well, what type of exercise matters the most?
And this is where things get interesting because it's not just one thing. For optimal health span and lifespan, you need to train across four distinct domains. We call those the four pillars of longevity exercise.
Let's kind of walk everyone through each of those, right? So, pillar one is going to be zone two cardio. I'm sure you guys have heard of that. This is how we build your aerobic base.
Yeah. Zone two cardio, you hear that term thrown around a lot. And I think an easy way to think of it is a steady state aerobic based training. And it's where you're doing exercise and you can carry on a conversation. So, this is something like walking, rocking, cycling. You're still able to carry on a conversation, but you may not be able to belt out a song. Although I will say sometimes when I'm running, I can belt out a song.
I'd say it's probably when you were least tone deaf. Like when you're running and singing, just if you're like, around the house and singing, sometimes I feel like you're a little off key, but when you're running and singing, it sounds pretty good.
Oh, thanks. I'm admittedly tone deaf. I think I sound like Mariah Carey, but my kids don't. Anyway, in heart rate terms, it's roughly 60 to 70% of what your max heart rate is. So the key is you should really be able to sustain this pace for 45 to 60 minutes. So remember, zone two is conversational pace, 60 to 70% of your max heart rate.
Why is it that zone two is so good? Well, the reason is that in zone two, we are still burning fat. And when we spend more time in that fat burning zone of zone two, we get more efficient at burning fat instead of glucose. And glucose, we have in limited supply. It's stored in our muscle tissue. Fat, we have especially in America, we have a huge supply of fat in our body. So the better we get at burning fat, the better our overall health gets. That's the whole point of zone two is that the more time you spend in zone two, the more efficient you get at doing it. And then you can do higher and higher levels of exertion and still stay in zone two.
Yeah, when we're doing zone two, you can maximize your fat oxidation, as you mentioned. You build your mitochondrial density, which is that powerhouse of the cell. You improve your metabolic flexibility, and you burn more fat than carbs. I realized I was overtraining. I just go on the treadmill and run for 45 minutes, and I was at about a zone 3 or 4. And as it turns out, when we did my VO2 max in the office, when I'm at a zone 4, I am not burning any fat. I am only burning carbs, which is why the second I got off the treadmill, I would be starving. But if you can kind of get away with staying at that zone 2, you are really just tapping into your fat stores and exercising efficiently.
People feel like if I'm not exhausted at the end of my workout, that I didn't get a good workout. And that's what happens when you move from zone two into zone 3 and 4, is that you will fatigue. By the time you are done with your exercise, if you're in zone 4 or even zone 5, max effort, you're going to feel like I got nothing left in the tank. And while that there is a benefit to going into zone 4 and zone 5, training on some sort of regular basis in zone 3, zone 4 does not give you the most bang for your buck when it comes to building that aerobic base, which is what we really want. To become efficient at burning fat, we have to actually stay in the zone where we are burning fat. So this is about, I only have so much time to exercise. I don't have the 4.5 hours. I have 2 hours. I have 3 hours to exercise. How am I going to be most efficient and get the most bang for my buck? Well, you need to do zone two.
Yep. And the beautiful thing about zone 2 is it's sustainable, right? You're not destroying yourself. You're building this massive aerobic engine that supports everything else you do.
So some examples of what zone two is, right? The brisk walking, jogging, cycling, swimming, rowing, anything that you can do at a steady state, moderate intensity, where you could do it for 45 minutes. And if somebody said, hey, I need you to do it for 10 more minutes, you'd be like, oh yeah, fine. I'm fine. I can definitely belt out another 10 minutes because I'm not exhausted yet.
All right, so let's move on to pillar number 2, high intensity interval training, which is your VO2 max workout.
So pillar two is kind of the exact opposite of zone two training, right? VO2 max is that high intensity. This is where you are definitely going to be exhausted. And we're not training like at zone two, we feel like we're at half effort, right? But this VO2 max work, we're nearing full effort.
Yeah, and this is where you're pushing yourself hard, right? You're at an 8, 9, or even a 10 out of 10 effort for short bursts. And usually that's a couple of minutes followed by recovery periods.
So, what is VO2 max training? Well, it is literally us doing high intensity efforts where we're getting anywhere from 85% of our max heart rate up to 100% of our max heart rate. And generally, we're shooting for these intervals of between 3 and 5 minutes of that high intensity. And then that's followed by resting periods of 3 to 4 minutes. So we do the high intensity, we rest, and then we do the high intensity again, we rest, high intensity rest. We're trying to get to 4 to 6 of those intervals altogether. And if you're able to do that, your VO2 max is undoubtedly going to go through the roof.
Right. And our target is usually one session per week. So you are not doing this every single day.
You need recovery, basically. Like you can't do this training effectively on a daily basis. Even elite athletes will not do this more than once, maybe twice a week at max. But for most of us, once a week is more than enough.
Yeah, recovery is key, right? This is pretty hard training, and adequate rest between sessions is critical.
So if you're a beginner and you've never done this and you feel like I'm not in really good shape, you should not start with VO2 max training. You should start with zone two training, get to a point where you can do 45 minutes of consistent zone two training. Once you can do that a couple days a week, now you can start to throw in the intervals. And you may want to start with 30-second of high intensity, 2 minutes of rest, 30 seconds of high intensity, 2 minutes of rest. Build up. If you can do 6 of those, then you can go to 1 minute of high intensity, 2 minutes of rest. Then 2 minutes of high intensity, 2 or 3 minutes of rest. Eventually, if you can get to, the Norwegian 4x4, 4 minutes of high intensity, 4 minutes of rest, and you do 6 cycles of those, then I promise you'll be killing it on the VO2 max front.
And that's something we test for in the office. Sometimes our patients get discouraged when they're in the below average category for their age and sex. And VO2 max is completely modifiable. You can literally bump up your VO2 max by 5 points in a matter of months.
The lower you are, the easier it is to make gain on it. So if you're like at the high level and you're trying to get into the elite 2.5%, yes, it's going to take quite a bit of an effort to move it because you're already so high on your VO2 max. But if you're in the low category, it does not take that much. Your body does not want to be in the low category. Your body wants to be somewhere near the average, and it will not take much for you to get up to at least the average level.
Right. Even people in their 60s, 70s, 80s can improve their VO2 max with proper training. It's never too late.
Correct.
All right. So we covered pillar 1, which is zone 2 training. We covered pillar 2, which is high intensity interval training, your VO2 max training. Now let's move to pillar 3, which is strength training, your anti aging insurance policy.
Your favorite.
My favorite. Now it's my favorite.
Right. So we lose about 3 to 8% of our muscle mass per decade after the age of 30 if we're not actively doing something to maintain it. That muscle loss is what's eventually called sarcopenia, and it is directly linked to frailty, falls, loss of independence, and ultimately early mortality.
Yeah. And why does strength matter? Strength matters because muscle mass is directly correlated to your metabolic health, your bone density, your functional independence, and fall prevention.
Sarcopenia, that muscle loss that happens, it significantly accelerates after the age of 60. So most of that has to do with the fact that we are just less active. But we do know that after the age of 65, somewhere in that 65 to 70 range, that there is a steep drop off of muscle mass. So the more muscle mass you have going into your later years, the more protected you are in the long run.
And I think there's so many misconceptions. I'm 43. We grew up with cardio, cardio, cardio. There was no introduction of weight training, especially for women. And so I think it's important to educate our listeners. I know you had to help me because for me, I thought putting on muscle meant 10-pound weights, doing bicep curls, and I was doing those for a year and wondering why I'm not putting on muscle mass. So let's dive into how to efficiently put on muscle mass.
I think this is where marriage is good, right? So, yes, it's true that I helped her with the strength training aspect, but she helped me significantly with my cardiorespiratory fitness. She, to her credit, watched me struggle with running quite a bit before she was like, okay, you want to do this the right way now? This is important. You should not just have some muscles. You should also be able to have some endurance, which I had none of. And it was a game changer, which ultimately led to me enjoying running. And then she was like, oh, hey, by the way, I signed you up for a half marathon.
I did. I signed you up without telling you. It was like after the fact. Oh, P.S.
I love you.
Yeah.
You're going to run 13.1 miles with me.
Right.
Yeah.
No, but sometimes you need that goal, right? And then you just work backwards.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So back to the strength training thing. I think women in particular were done a huge disservice in our generation because they were told about this low weight, high rep thing, and that just doesn't tone, which basically just, I mean, visually, tone just means that you have low body fat percentage. It doesn't mean anything about how healthy your muscles are. Toned isn't really the goal. The goal is, can I actually do things? And that requires us to have strength. And so Now we know that this is the actual formula for having strength. You have to target 2 or 3 full body weightlifting sessions a week, and they have to be about 30 to 60 minutes. Yes, you can actually build muscle with resistance training by only doing 30-minute sessions twice a week. But you really have to pay attention to RPE. RPE is rate of perceived exertion. Rate of perceived exertion means how much effort am I putting into this? So if I'm putting in at least an RPE 8, not 10, 10 means that I'm going to full exhaustion. 8 means that I got a little bit of cushion, and in that little bit of cushion, I don't get injured, right? So if I'm doing a set of squats and I finish the set of squats and I feel like I got 2 left in the tank, then I hit an RPE of 8. If I have 0 left in the tank, I have an RPE of 10. That means that that last rep, I was very injury prone. And if I did not get hurt, I got lucky, basically.
So RPE can change day to day, right? So rate of perceived exertion. If I had a shitty night of sleep and I'm trying to go to the gym the next day and lift weights, my RPE will be lower than on a day where I'm well rested and I got full 8 hours of sleep.
100%. So it doesn't matter what you were actually able to achieve on that day compared to last week, right? It only matters that you appropriately hit your goal, which is the RPE that you were trying to achieve that day. If you're doing zone 2 fitness on a day, right? That means that for someone, that might mean that they're running an 11-minute mile, right? And that's their normal zone 2. But if they slept really bad, or they're sleep deprived, or they're stressed out, or whatever they have, or they're fighting a cold, their RPE of a 5 or 6, instead of running an 11-minute mile, it might be a 12-minute mile that day, right? But they still got the same benefit because they hit their RPE goal of I'm trying to hit 5 to 6 RPE. So that's the real goal, is that you're paying attention before you go to the gym for whatever it is, whatever exercise session you're doing. You know what your goal is from an RPE standpoint that day. If you're doing resistance training, your RPE is always going to be an 8. I say 8.5 or so is the right RPE for most people, because that gives them enough muscle stimulus to build muscle, but it prevents them from getting chronic injury.
And I think that's so motivating because to understand rate of perceived exertion, because there's some days where I benched, 75 pounds. And the next week I'm thinking, how can I not bench 75 pounds? I move it back down to 65. Well, if I'm on my cycle or I'm not feeling well, of course, I'm not going to be able to bench that 75. So I think that RPE concept is a motivator that whatever you're doing for that day, it could be you're coming down with a cold, your menstrual cycle, you're just emotionally kind of in a funk. And so any kind of movement is beneficial, and don't let that number of, oh, I was able to bench this much last week and I can't do the same, be a discouraging factor.
I think the long term goals matter, right? Like month over month, you want to make improvement, but week over week, it's just not possible. Too much stuff happens in life. There's too much variability day to day and what's going on, how you feel, that your own personal RPE for that day has to be the metric that you're really using, rather than, well, last week I benched 75, right? So I think it's also worth mentioning to our listeners what the movement patterns are that are the most bang for the buck. Because as long as you're not some sort of professional athlete, there's basically 6 compound movements that everyone has to get used to. There's a whole bunch of different ways on how to do those 6 movements, but these are the basic movement patterns. Why don't you go over which ones they are?
Yeah, and I like those patterns because if you don't know what you're doing at the gym, if you're on vacation and you're limited in equipment, this can pretty much be done anywhere. So, squats, deadlifts, bench press, overhead press, pull ups, and barbell rows. Those are movements that train multiple joints but hit all of the major muscle groups.
So, like we say those things, but that doesn't mean that you need to have a bench press to do a pressing movement, right? Push ups are a bench press.
Yeah.
You don't need to have a pull up bar to do a pull up, right? You can have anything that you can just kind of hang lower from. If you can't do a pull up yet, you can just hang from the bar with your feet on the ground, a bar that's set only a few feet off the ground, and you're just pulling yourself up to the bar, not carrying your entire body weight, but just, half of your body weight. There's multiple ways to do these movement patterns. You don't have to have a straight bar, with 300 pounds on it and do a true deadlift. You can be holding 2 gallons of milk in your hands, right? And do a deadlift the same way.
That's what I do at the grocery store.
I've seen you. And I'm like talking to the people shopping. I'm like, dude, check out that lady doing deadlifts with gallons of milk. Oh, by the way, she's my wife.
And let's not forget progressive overload. We had talked about RPE, right? That might vary day to day, but we want you to gradually increase weight, reps, or difficulty over time. And that's those metrics like month over month or year over year. And we should not fear heavy weights, women especially. We need to lift challenging loads to maintain bone density. That is so important. Osteoporosis is rampant, and it's such a travesty that we do not check bone density earlier. Well, we do at our clinic, but really the standard of care right now is wait till you're 65 and then tell every woman they have osteopenia or osteoporosis. Well, we know that lifting heavy weights prevents osteoporosis. So if we start doing this in our 30s and 40s, we are ensuring our bones.
Yeah, I think making sure that you're lifting things that are heavy for you, muscle and bone density just go hand in hand. There's no way for them not to go hand in hand. So if you have a lot of muscle, there's just no chance that you have low bone density. That's just the way it works. And that's why you're kind of killing two birds with one stone here.
Yeah. And we'll see women sometimes. I was under muscled to start with. And I would say most of the women we test for are under muscled to begin with. And it's only until they're aware of it that they understand, like, okay, I'm on track to have sarcopenia and osteoporosis, but I want to fix this now. So it's getting tested, understanding where you stand, and then having that long runway to start training and ensure yourself for the long run is so important.
Totally. So I think the main message here is simple. Lift heavy things, lift them regularly. Your 85-year-old self will thank you.
Yep. So we talked about the three pillars, right? Zone 2 training, your VO₂ Max hit training, resistance strength training, which is pillar 3. Let's move on to the last pillar, which is pillar number 4, stability, mobility, and balance.
So I think this pillar 4, is probably one of the most overlooked ones, right? Having stability, mobility, and balance are crucial for us. And this is part of what keeps us functional as we age. I wouldn't say that it's sexy, but it's absolutely critical for injury prevention and really maintenance of independence.
I think stability is sexy.
I feel like women think it's more sexy than men do.
Stability?
Yeah.
Stability in marriage and relationships is super sexy. I don't know what you're talking about. All right, so let's talk about why stability, mobility, and balance matter. Falls are the leading cause of injury death in adults over the age of 65.
So the components of this is really balance training, hip mobility, ankle stability, core strength, and coordination. And really, this is not something that needs its own workout. It's something that you piggyback with the other workouts that you're doing in the strength and cardiorespiratory fitness arena. This is like what happens during your warm ups and cool downs. You should take 10, 15 minutes during those other workouts to do this work as the prelim or the cool down because it doesn't require that much more.
Yeah, and these are things that you can do waiting in line at the grocery checkout, if you're at the airport, some things like single leg stands, heel to toe walking, yoga poses, that would be kind of hard in the airport. We'd probably get stared at.
Or at the grocery store.
Tai Chi, agility drills. Obviously, those are probably things that you want to do at the gym before or after your workout. But a lot of these things are simple things that you could do at home when you're bored.
You can't be sitting in your living room and lifting weights and watching TV at the same time, right? But you could get up before your bathroom break, right? And just stand up, stand on one foot while you're staring at the TV for 30 seconds and then switch to the other foot for 30 seconds. Like there are ways to do this without making a huge effort and it will pay you back in some dividends.
You'd be surprised at how hard it is at over 40 to sit crisscross applesauce like our kids. Like until we started practicing it, our hips were cracking, our back was cracking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's all of that. You have to actually practice it. Studies show that if you're actually able to get up off of the ground without using your arms, basically just use your leg strength and your balance to get up off of the ground, that you are way less likely to actually sustain a fall that causes you to break a hip or have a vertebral fracture.
Yeah. The point is, don't neglect this stuff. You can incorporate these balance challenges into your everyday life. You can practice getting down on the floor and getting back up again. You want to work on your hip, your ankle mobility. It doesn't take long, but it pays enormous dividends.
I think it's probably worth mentioning a little bit about how to structure your week practically for doing this exercise. It sounds a bit intimidating that I've got to do zone 2 training, I have to do VO₂ Max training, I have to do strength training, I have to throw in some mobility work. And honestly, it is a little intimidating to think of it that way. It's, I think, easier to think about, well, how much time do I actually have? And that's going to vary from different seasons of our life. Like if you just had a baby and you're up all night, like there's no way for you to be able to structure in 6 hours of exercise a week, right? And we get that. The goal is like, well, how much time can you carve out? Is it 30 minutes? Is it 1 hour? Is it 3 hours? Whatever you can carve out, we want you to be most efficient in getting the most bang for your buck.
I know. Some of these influencers, these athlete influencers, they're in their young 20s. And I sometimes want to punch them in the face because they don't know what it's like. It is so hard working, raising kids, trying to balance marriage, sanity, and not to mention the post baby body, what happens after you've carried a child. Like some of these people are so tone deaf when it's like, yeah, they're yelling at someone who's 50, like, yeah, you just do this. Well, wait till you hit your 40s and 50s and things start hurting.
It's a different proposition.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So there is this kind of there's these guidelines that are actually very, very good and they are actually very well thought out. And this is probably what the ideal scenario looks like. If your time restraints right now do not allow this ideal scenario, that's fine. It's just breaking up the time that you do have into these buckets. So the thing that we know is probably the most bang for your buck is if you're able to get in about 150 minutes a week of cardio, and that can be broken into the majority, 80% of that is going to be that zone 2 cardio, and only 20% of that is going to be the VO₂ max stuff, right? So basically, if you're able to get in about 45 minutes to 60 minutes of zone 2 cardio twice a week, and then you're able to do a half hour, 40 minutes once a week of the interval training, then you've crushed the cardiorespiratory fitness. You pair that with 2 35 to 45-minute sessions of whole body strength training where you're focusing on those 6 compound movements, right? So you do 3 of those compound movements on one day of the week and you do 3 of those compound movements on the other day of the week, you are going to be well on your way to having great cardiorespiratory fitness and great strength later into life. If you can't do that, right, then it's using the same type of logic of, I want to still be able to get in the same movement patterns, but I'm just not going to do it for as much time. And you adjust accordingly based on the time that you have.
Yeah. If you're getting in, like you said, those 2 Zone 2 workouts, 1 VO₂ Max a week, and 2 strength training sessions a week, you are killing it.
That's 5 hours of exercise a week.
But you are in that top 1%. And that is more important than being in the top 1% for wealth. You are in the top 1% for overall health if you are getting there. So, again, if you're busy, you just had a baby, you're slammed with work, we all have been in periods of our life where exercise had to take a back seat, and that's okay. But we always try and encourage our patients to get back on the horse and make it part of their regular life, right?
Yeah. You have to understand that if right now you play pickleball once a week or twice a week, well, that's cardio exercise. And if you don't have other time to do cardio exercise, that's fine for right now. Then I would focus on, if you do have some other time to carve out for exercise, you should do strength training because you're getting some cardio benefit from your pickleball. So it's more about being wise about how to spend the time that you have. I would much rather have somebody say, I love pickleball and I don't want to give that up just to go do Zone 2 training. I would never tell them give that up because that's a form of exercise that you really enjoy. You should keep doing that. How about if you've got 30, 40 minutes 2 other days a week, let's do some whole body strength training instead of trying to get rid of your pickleball to do extra cardio.
Yep. And like you mentioned, active recreation counts, right? Playing tennis, going on a hike with your kids, skiing, dancing, all these contribute to your overall activity and often hit multiple pillars at once.
I think one of the things that we didn't talk about is recovery, right? Um, so the only way that exercise makes sense is if you give your body time to recover. That is where sleep and nutrition play a huge role, and your rest days play a huge role. It is not good for us to have 7 full days of heavy activity. At most, we should be having 6 days of heavy activity. And when I say heavy activity, you have to understand that I'm also talking about Zone 2 fitness, right? Zone 2 fitness is not high intensity, but it still requires our body to refuel and rest so that we're ready for the next day. If you're throwing in 1 VO₂ max session a week and you're actually doing resistance training to an RPE of 8 or 8.5, then you definitely need one 24-hour period of full recovery, if not 2 days of full recovery, in order to be ready for the next week.
Yeah. All right. So we've covered the 4 pillars of exercise. We've talked about how to structure your week and make that a function of how much time you have. And let's cover some common pitfalls of exercise and how to avoid them.
I think the first big one is only doing the things that you enjoy or that you're good at. I was 100% guilty of this when we met, and I only lifted weights. It was what I felt like I knew. I never enjoyed cardio, mostly because I figured out after meeting my wife that I was doing it wrong. But this is one of the big things, right? Runners will just keep running because it's what they're good at. They get that runner's high, they feel good. And over time, they become injury prone because they're not supporting the musculature to continue doing the activity that they love doing. And ultimately, they end up losing muscle and becoming injury prone, where they have to take large amounts of time off of the activity that they love because they're not supporting it correctly through strength training.
Yeah. You basically need all 4 pillars to train your body and take care of your body properly.
My cardiorespiratory fitness suffered significantly because all I was doing was lifting. The first time that I went out to go run a mile after probably 15 years of not doing any real cardio, I basically couldn't finish a mile. And so in the last 4 or 5 years, to go from not being able to finish a mile to be able to run half marathons and run them at a decent pace, it's been quite a progression. And it took me a little bit of time to understand what the benefit was and how much better I feel because of it.
Yep. So we talked about the pitfalls of doing that one type of exercise, right? Runners with no strength training, they lose muscle and increase injury risk. Lifters, we see this in the gym all the time. They do no cardio, and many of them have poor metabolic health and a low VO2 max. And then we have our popular yoga Pilates people. So Pilates is their only exercise. And while it's great for mobility and core strength, it is insufficient for strength training and cardio. I said what I said. I'm probably going to get so much heat for it, but Pilates is great. And if you love it, you should keep doing it. But that alone is not going to cut it.
It doesn't cut it for the long run. And I know I don't want to, like you said, I don't want to make women upset because I mean, and I'm not saying men don't go to Pilates, but most Pilates classes are like 95% women, probably. It feels good, right? They're definitely like, it's not like they don't sweat. They do, but they're not hitting all of the pillars that we've talked about. And hence the training isn't really geared towards long term them having really good health. They're only hitting one of the pillars. And while they do get some core strength out of it, they're not shaking their muscles feeling like I've only got 1 or 2 reps in the tank. They're working in only one plane of movement at a time. They're not typically doing these compound movements. They're not fatiguing to the point that they're stimulating muscle remodeling where the muscle breaks down from the activity that you did. And then at night, it repairs itself stronger than it was before. And that is what is really required. That's why the RPE of 8.5 is required, because that's sufficient stimulus for the body to say, oh, whoa, I worked really hard. I need to now rebuild to be even stronger so that the next time you make me do this, I can do it.
I think it's all about efficiency, right? Time efficiency too. If you have X amount of time per week and you're a busy working mom, don't we want to maximize our exercise benefit? If you love Pilates, you should continue Pilates. But if you're doing Pilates 5 days a week, consider swapping out 2 or 3 of those days with a strength training or a zone 2 or a HIIT class, because that is going to give you so much more bang for your buck in the long run.
I think we have to keep in mind, and I think people forget this, that our lives before the last 100 years, and especially the last 50 years, and especially the last 20 or 30 years, just involve movement. So we did not have to go do strength training. We didn't have to go, run half marathons. Like we didn't have to do any of this stuff because our day to day activity involved physical work, right? Whether it was just keeping the house up, whether it was going to go get food, whether it was building shelter for your family, whether it's hunting, like it all required significant amounts of day to day work. And so you did not have to be thoughtful about how you were going to now we have to accommodate for the fact that our life does not require that amount of work. So we have to figure out how we're going to instill work in a time efficient manner that keeps our body functioning the way that it evolved to function.
Yep. So let's go through the number 2 pitfall, which is not going hard enough on your hard days or easy enough on your easy days. Your zone 2 days should feel sustainable, right? Going for a walk with your neighbor or your dog. If you're huffing and puffing on your zone 2 days, chances are you're in zone 3 and it's not as beneficial.
It's not time efficient, right?
Correct. And your VO2 max workout day should be uncomfortable. If it's not hard, if you're not huffing and puffing 1 day a week, it's not working.
Yeah. I don't, truth be told, I don't do zone 2 or sorry, VO₂ Max training once a week anymore, right? I play tennis and I feel like I get a pretty good workout at tennis. I work very hard when I play, and my heart rate will get up into the 170, 180 range when I play tennis. So I only do VO₂ Max once every 2 weeks, once every 3 weeks, and that's enough for me because I'm trying to stay the same now. I'm not trying to gain VO₂ Max anymore. I'm happy with where it's at. So in the beginning, you need to schedule this correctly and you need to do it once a week, once every other week, so that you build up to the level that you want to be at. That being said, on the days that you're doing easy work, the zone 2 work, it needs to actually be easy for you to be time efficient and to build that metabolic flexibility where your body appropriately uses fat very efficiently. And then when you do VO₂ Max, it appropriately uses glucose very efficiently.
Number 3 pitfall, neglecting strength training. So, going to like women are so good at so many things. My dad always told me, like, women can do everything men can do, plus have babies. So, we're more powerful.
Pound for pound, women are actually quite a bit stronger than men. Like there's studies that show that, especially in the lower body lifts, women pound for pound are arguably stronger than men.
I love that.
So there's no reason why women can't be strong.
Yes. And so that neglecting of strength training tends to err on the side of women, right? We avoid heavy weights due to fear of getting bulky, but this isn't our fault because this was ingrained in our heads since we were teenagers. But now we know that muscle is critical for our bone density, our metabolic health, and our functional longevity.
And I think the other group of people that this really affects are the people who love cardio, right? So if you were a swimmer in high school and you keep swimming 2 or 3 days a week, that's great for your cardiorespiratory fitness. But swimming requires absolutely no true muscle, what's the right word? Adaptation to
You're floating.
you're floating. It does not require you to resist gravity. You weigh less in the water. So your muscle health is significantly compromised. The same thing with running.
Swimmers have really low bone density.
They actually have the lowest bone density of professional athletes because their sport, where they spend the bulk of their time, does not require them to resist gravity. So anybody who really loves cardio is going to end up neglecting the resistance training. Anybody who grew up in the 80s and 90s and was told that tone is the look is going to obviously not focus on the proper type of strength training.
Right. And if you're doing these exercises, right, Pilates or running for mental health, I know I'm a different woman if I don't run a couple times a week. I do it for mental clarity. It's the way I decompress. But I've learned to kind of train efficiently and incorporate these other pillars into my life too. So let's go through number 4, which is ignoring recovery and sleep.
Yeah, so exercise is the stimulus, right? Adaptation actually happens after the exercise is complete. So you get the stimulus, you get the muscle injury, the tendon injury, and then you got to rest and refuel. If you don't rest and refuel correctly, you will end up burning out, you will end up injury prone, you will end up having hormonal disruption, and you will feel like I am not making any gain. You can't go on 3 hours of sleep and be dieting and feel like you're healthy. It just doesn't work.
Yep. And the number 5 pitfall, which is that all or nothing thinking. And this is so common in the longevity space. I hear it all the time. And then I think listeners get this message like, well, I'm just not going to do any of it because I can't get 100%, or there's no way I'm going to check off all these boxes. So we want you to know missing a workout doesn't mean the week is ruined. Some movement is always better than none. And it's consistency over months and years, not that intensity over a short burst of 1 month that is going to move the needle.
I'm super guilty of this when I was younger. Like if I had told myself I'm going to the gym for my plan is an hour and a half workout and I for whatever happened at work or anything, and I only have an hour, I basically just say, I'm not going. Well, I'm not going to be able to get the workout that I had planned. And who did I harm? Like, I harmed myself, right? 1 hour of movement is better than 0 hours of movement, which is what's going to happen if I skip the workout altogether, right? I'm just going to sit on the couch and not do anything, which is what I ended up doing.
Yep. So any movement is better than no movement. And it doesn't matter where you're starting at. Many of our listeners, they're already doing some sort of exercise regimen, but many are starting from scratch and they haven't worked out or lifted a weight in 15 years. And that's where I think the gains are so steep so early, which is awesome for those patients to see such immense progress. And it's motivating for them. So even if you're starting with nothing, like there's nowhere to go but up.
That's right. A couple of notes about special populations and some modifications. And I think it's worth quickly addressing this. There are definitely changes that happen at different life stages, and the formula is not exactly the same when you're 25 or 35 as when you're 75, but the general principles do still hold. So for the beginners, for the people who are sedentary right now and they're like, well, how do I even start? Well, you got to start with basic stuff, right? Walking for 45 minutes, right? Building up. If it's hard for you to walk 2 or 3 blocks, well, you got to build up by walking 2 or 3 blocks to be able to walk 4 to 6 blocks. Then basic body weight movements, right? You don't have to have a barbell and dumbbells. You can do a lot of movement patterns at home just with your own body weight. And if you just go to Dr. Google and Google body weight exercises, you can get in really good shape just doing body weight exercises without any equipment at home. But you have to know what to do and know that it is accessible.
Yep. And for older adults who are over the age of 60, all four pillars still apply. Nothing is off limits, but you might need a little more recovery time between those hard sessions. And strength training is even more critical, right, to prevent sarcopenia after the age of 60. So, but we want you to do this safely. So sometimes you need to consider working with a trainer to make sure you're doing proper form or using some sort of structured exercise training program.
The biggest thing is recovery, right? Like, I mean, being a college athlete, having 4 exercise sessions a day in college, there's no way today my body could handle 4 discrete exercise sessions a day. I can't do it. So that's what changes with age, and that's what we have to pay attention to.
For people with injuries or chronic conditions, work with your doctors to modify appropriately. Focus on what you can do rather than what you can't. Many conditions improve with exercise: autoimmune conditions, arthritis, diabetes, heart disease. I learned that cancer, if you have cancer, having more muscle mass can lower your inflammatory markers. So, pretty much exercise can benefit any health condition that you have. And there's plenty of low impact options if you have joint issues to start with. There's swimming, cycling, elliptical, rowing, and strength training can be adapted around almost any injury. We get all these patients that complain about back pain. Well, why does your back hurt? That's a whole nother episode, which we're going to do. But really, back pain is kind of the end stage when you lack the muscle to support the spine. And now your spine is doing most of the work. So we'll go through that in another episode.
We're getting people to change their mind about what it is that's causing back pain because everyone is worried about what their MRI result is. And that's like a whole separate issue that, yeah, we'll have to spend some time on another podcast. Also, just worth noting really quick for the advanced and competitive athletes, overtraining is a problem. And this is when you are not getting enough rest because you have overtrained, you become very injury prone. So periodization becomes very critical, meaning alternating hard blocks with easy blocks. And you got to figure out the right regimen for how to cool down and rest.
And the key message here is that these principles are universal, right? We talked about the four pillars: your zone two training, your VO2 max sessions, your strength sessions, and your stability sessions, right? All four of those pillars matter for everyone, but the specific implementation may vary from person to person.
Absolutely. Just getting back to where we started now, how I had mentioned about listening to those experts about specific issues for women, I want to bring it back to that RPE discussion. It doesn't matter whether you're postmenopause, premenopause, what time of your menstrual cycle it is, whether you are a male who was a college athlete and has not done anything for the last 20 years, whether you're a runner and don't do any weightlifting. Like, it doesn't matter where you're starting from. The only thing that matters is how much exertion you are supposed to put in on this day based on how you feel this day. And I think as long as today is supposed to be a zone two cardio day and you should be targeting an RPE of 5 or 6, you should feel like I put in today the effort that I could give, and that was a 5 or 6 versus the strength training day of an 8.5 or an 8. And that's going to vary based on how you're feeling, what your hormone balance is, based on what part of life you're in, right? That's what I think matters the most. And that's an easier way to think of it than trying to time things based on this is where I should be right now.
Yeah, that RPE, rate of perceived exertion, that concept is so much easier to manage. Like, I can't even keep track of my to do list, what I'm doing at work, who's picking up what kid, what am I making for dinner, what do I have to get at the grocery store. I do not need another thing to keep track of. And so sometimes those workout tidbits from these experts can be a deterrent. I know for me, I work out 5, 6 days a week. And when I hear those things, I'm like, this seems so overwhelming. Like, I don't want to do any of it. I'm just going to do my own thing. But that RPE concept, which is how am I feeling today? If I'm kind of feeling like shit, my RPE might be lower than it was yesterday. I can deal with that. And this workout was worthwhile.
Yes. So just to conclude a few action steps here, I know that we covered quite a bit. And really, if you take nothing else from this episode, just remember exercise is the single most powerful tool in your tool belt for extending both lifespan and health span. And also, not all exercise is created equal.
Yep. You need all four pillars. You need your zone two for your aerobic base. You need your VO2 max interval training to maximize your cardiorespiratory fitness. You need strength training to maintain your muscle mass and your bone density. And you need stability work to prevent falls and maintain function. Let's face it, all of us are going to fall at some point, right? It's just a matter of when, it's not a matter of if.
So let's remember this is not about perfection, it's just about consistency. Small deposits into that health bank account compound over months and years. You don't need to be an elite athlete. You just need to show up regularly. You need to challenge yourself appropriately, and you need to recover well. Do that, and you're setting yourself up for the long game.
Right, because we're not just trying to live longer. We are playing the long game, which is maximizing the number of healthy, active, and independent years we get to enjoy. Who wants to be in a nursing home with a diaper? I don't.
Absolutely right. Not me either. I think that's it for today. Thank you for listening. If this episode resonated with you, please share it. Please share it with somebody who you feel might need to hear it. We love it if you review our podcast, subscribe, check out our website at mdlongevitylab.com for more resources.
Thanks for listening, guys, and we will see you next time. Keep playing the long game.
Thank you for playing the long game with MD Longevity Lab. You can visit us at www.mdlongevitylab.com to learn more about how we can support you on your journey. Stay connected with us on social media at MD Longevity Lab for tips, updates, and behind-the-scenes insights. If you enjoyed today's episode, we'd love it if you subscribed, left us a rating, or shared it with someone you know who's also playing the long game. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.